Hello there, this is Alan English with another autism tutorial. And this one, another long one, it's on the subject of teachers and mentors. Now, before I start here actually, I should let you know, trigger warning, discussion of abuse. Autistic people are often seek guidance or advice trying to find their way through life, and we can be drawn towards authority figures for counsel and advice. In some instances, we can even select a mentor figure, a source of wisdom and experience in life or our chosen field from whom we can draw encouragement and strength. Many teachers and mentors are by and large positive figures, but some can bully or take advantage of autistic people because of our personality and our vulnerability. With authority figures in and out of school, I found it best to be honest whenever I got in trouble. My thinking was that if I was honest, people would trust me. If they could trust me, they could communicate better. And while punishment for wrongdoing was not always avoided in school, the severity of it was lessened by my being honest. I cared about my school career and I wanted to do well in it. The first teacher I knew who really understood me and my condition was at primary school. This was years before my diagnosis. This guy could be funny, perceptive, and quite theatrical in the way he humiliated pupils that got on the wrong side of him. What was notable for me was whenever I got on the wrong side of him, or if ever I had a spat with other kids, he would spare me the public humiliation he often doled out to other kids, and he would take me out of the class to scold me privately. It's as if he knew, that wouldn't quite work. A more one-to-one approach was better. In his report cards on me, he pointed up my social weaknesses and with forming friendships and said I had to learn how to take setbacks, disappointments, and changes in routine. This was honest, clear, and fair feedback, and I tried to apply it. Outside of school, a social group I had a lot of contact with was the Scout movement. It was through the Scouts I discovered theatre through the first time through the gang show. And doing, summer camps with the Scouts gave me a strong sense of discipline and a kind of a work ethic. But what I want to talk about here, and this is no slight whatsoever on the Scout movement, which I believe to be a very respectable organisation, but nonetheless, I want to talk about someone I met there who tried to take advantage of me. Now, there was a scoutmaster there in my troop at whose country house we often went camping at weekends. At nights, quite a few of us would sleep in this guy's room. Now, I sensed something was wrong when I was standing in the middle of his living room, staring into space as I was wont to do at that time. And when he approached me and kissed me on the cheek right out of nowhere, didn't know where that came from, why even he did it, and I was like, what? Why? Later on that night, I was asleep in his room beside his bed, and he woke me up, saying, "Come into my bed, Alan. You'll be warmer. Come into my bed, Alan. You'll be warmer." My body froze, and despite his repeated attempts, I just about managed to resist him. I told my parents, so next time we camped out there, I slept in a different room. Felt much safer that way. This man later left the Scouts, and despite an attempt to flee the country, he was eventually arrested and sent to prison for child abuse. Now, I tell this story, dark though it is, because it could so easily have gone the other way. Now, I was lucky. I had parents I trusted to talk about this. Much of the time, this sort of thing is kept quiet. You see, autistic people find it hard, as children or as adults, to report this type of thing, especially if it is a daily part of their lives. So, if you're a support worker supporting an autistic person, make sure you do a thorough abuse and safety check, as this sort of thing can so easily occur. When I came to London, when I was 23, I did a postgraduate diploma in an acting college in this city. I had a very difficult year before going into college. Like leaving university kind of left me with a sort of an aimlessness, and moving down to London from Aberdeen was not easy. I mean, let's face it, no big move is. I was still carrying a lot of baggage around from my childhood, and I was processing a lot of this dark stuff, this violent and sometimes, adult sexual material in my acting class. It was creeping some of my classmates out who really didn't know where I was coming from or why I was going in these directions. But I didn't fully realise the effect my behaviour was having on them until one classmate stopped the class in the middle of an improvisation where, in character, I had just accused a fellow classmate of being a pedophile. So this was a made-up situation, and in character, I'd accused my fellow classmate, also in character, of being a pedophile. And another classmate watching this stopped the whole class. She says, no, she shouted, screamed at me. He says, he keeps going in a kind of a sexual direction, and I just think that's wrong. And she started shouting that she'd had enough of me and my antics, and in the end, I had to come clean to my fellow students about my being autistic. Now, I had told the college principals, when I was auditioning for the college, but I had not told anyone else up until then, and this had created fear and misunderstanding between my classmates and me. This was later to reverberate back on me quite significantly. But once this came out, that I was autistic and I had these sorts of difficulties and this type of baggage, I was better able to step back, apologise and adjust my behaviour in and out of class. Most of the teachers who were around at that time, were in the college, were pretty good about my condition and supported me well enough throughout the rest of the year. It was a one-year diploma. There was one teacher, however, who was not very good. Now, this particular teacher had favourites whose acting she liked, and in class she would quietly build them up and encourage them. However, if you weren't on her favourites list, if she didn't like your acting, she would come down on you very, very harshly. A little too harshly for my liking. I know of someone who stormed out of her class because they didn't get on with her, and I know of another too whom she didn't like, who in the end didn't bother turning up to her classes. Judging from what she said outside of class to me, I don't think she believed I really should be an actor in the first place. And our class time together was very frustrating for me. I stuck it out, but it was very difficult. I would be doing a scene and she would repeatedly scream over and over, there's no logic to what you're doing. This was a senseless direction. It made completely no sense to me, and I don't think it was meant to be honest. She seemed to encourage the other students in the improvisations that they did with me to put me on the back foot, to be loud and aggressive with me, and just go into sexual areas completely out of nowhere. So these were all enacted situations, I hasten to add, not in anything going on out of class. In that acted, she encouraged my fellow students to kind of put me on the back foot. And with what had happened earlier in the year with my being aggressive and going into these kind of dark and sexual areas, I think she was trying to show me, how do you like it? I think now, and I could be wrong, that she was less interested in teaching me than in breaking me down psychologically, in making me give up acting, because she didn't think I was meant to be an actor. Given the more sympathetic and supportive way I was treated by the other teachers in the college, there was no reason for her to treat me in the way that she did, and I later learned after I had graduated that the college had fired her. This story demonstrates kind of thing that can occur in a teaching environment with teachers who are not understanding about autism, who are not sympathetic to us and our challenges, and can really treat us terribly. On a more positive note, sometimes mentors can crop up in unexpected places. For a year in London, I lived with a fellow poet I met on the open mic circuit. His housekeeping skills, or lack thereof, drove me to many a meltdown, I can tell you. But nonetheless, I learned a lot from him about myself and about poetry. He took me under his wing for a little while and he gave me feedback on what I was writing. And he gave me a book called The Ode Less Travelled by Stephen Fry, which was about poetic forms. And reading it and kind of going through everything that was in that book, it's influenced the kind of classical style that I write and perform in today. For me, my one true mentor, and I was very lucky to have her, she was the one that influenced me more than any other, and she was a lady I knew in Aberdeen. I'll say her name was Annie Ingalls. That is her picture on the wall behind me. When I was 14, I did a speech and drama class which she was teaching, and from this she invited me to a summer school she was doing called Theatre School. I did a Shakespeare play, A Midsummer Night's Dream. It took me a while to get into the text and understand it, but Annie directed this play, and our work together in it kick-started my acting ambitions. Now, she knew 2 years before my diagnosis that I was autistic, and she asked her assistant head to keep an eye on me. I did several more shows with Annie, and she remained a friend and supporter to me throughout my years at school and university. I got to know her very, very well, and as she knew my weaknesses and my troubles, I knew hers as well. Our relationship was uniquely empathetic in the sense that each of us could tell what the other one was thinking and feeling without saying anything or being in the same room. When she felt pain, so did I, and vice versa. I was lost after leaving university, and I told Annie that, in the middle of this kind of gap here between leaving university, going down to London, I told Annie in that kind of period I still wanted to be an actor, and she helped prepare me for what became my postgraduate diploma, and she informed the college that eventually accepted me onto their postgraduate course. She informed them about my condition and gave us a very good reference. I visited Annie several times in Aberdeen long after I had moved to London, and we enjoyed catching up. I'm glad she helped send me to London, and where I could make a life for myself without any of the baggage that I had in Aberdeen. I was devastated when she died, and even though it's been nearly 12 years this year, I still miss her today. But she influenced so many others and helped inspire and encourage them to move forward in their own lives. In conclusion, autistic people often seek counsel from teachers and authority figures in a world that's very hard for us to understand. Sometimes we can be exposed to bullying and abuse by those very same people, but if we are really lucky, we can find a mentor figure, someone who understands us, shows us what we can do, and helps us to find a way forward.